Cinema is a shared experience of entertainment. Your identity evolves from the culture that surrounds you. With the rigid structure of early cinema being heteronormative, queer fans would feel alienated. As stated in the film Celluloid Closet,
we are pathetically starved for images of ourselves.
Since the birth of Hollywood cinema, there has been conspiracy. Conspiracy created by queer fandoms, emancipating movies and stars. I will be talking about why queer fandoms may create gossip and conspiracy, reading between the lines of mainstream cinema, and reimagining a queer perspective. How is this form of gossip and rumours important and progressive, and when is it not? When does it cross a boundary for the actor's private life? I will discuss how this use of reimagination has manifested representation onto the screen. Furthermore, what is Hollywood's motives behind this representation and explaining the profitable market of queer cinema created for heteronormative audiences? Why does the industry and fan fictions favour certain sexualities and identities over others? In the golden age of Hollywood, if any queer representation was on screen, it was usually a portrayal of mockery. For some fans, they appreciated this, because at least it was some form of visibility, despite it being a harmful way to illustrate what straight people should think of gay people and how gay people should see themselves. It made sense that queer fans would begin to use creative spectatorship, reimagining cinema as something more relatable and enticing. There were some hints to queer characters in mainstream cinema without mockery. However, these weren't discussed. They were something that you had to read between the lines to see, a kind of secret forbidden love that queer fans would learn to watch films in this way, decoding it together. People can emancipate movies to see what they want to see, which explains why no one really watches the same film as another. Gossip and conspiracy unraveled in fan magazines and fan fiction. Many fandoms create rumours as part of active spectatorship. However, there is a huge force behind these queer notions to reimagine a kind of fantasy of involvement in cinema romance. Beyond the conspiracies made between the characters in reconstructing cinema, there was also gossip between the actors themselves off screen. An early example of this was rumours of actors such as the affairs between Marlene Dietrich and Greta Garbo. Marlene later in life confirmed part of these rumours, and a fan-made film has also been created by Cecilia Barriga of the pair's secret forbidden love. I believe this speculation and secrecy is what caused the passionate affair to be so ill-fated. It provides an example of when gossip and conspiracy can tarnish an actor's career and personal life. Manuel Puig is a great example of a self-proclaimed queer movie fan. Born in the 1930s, Puig was fascinated by movies and stars from a young age. He loved not only watching these films, but manipulating them and reimagining them. However, his idea of queer spectatorship is more of using the screen as a window rather than a mirror. He states that it doesn't matter what's being portrayed by Hollywood phony. He says, "It helped you hope." Although this is a positive way to deal with the lack of representation, it does not fulfill that hunger to see accurate portrayal on screen. Studios switch the focus of film as an art to a business. This is shown in the way they would make films in a factory-like manner, one after the other. Curating a cast of iconic stars is what drove the industry. This fascination and mystique of the stars kept the business thriving. Since the beginning of the star system, there has been PR stunt relationships or false personas created for these stars to induce speculation among the public or to provide more chemistry and credibility to a film romance. A star's image overbeared their acting ability, as acting could be taught, whereas the image is what fans alluded to, making it something to capitalize off from. And so personas were created from providing them with backstories, sometimes changing their name to a different stage name, and great publicity stunts like arranged relationships between stars. Opposed to fan conspiracies, this arose into the stars' off-screen life, as they are playing into this role under constant surveillance from the public. When scandals came out, the press and witnesses were often paid off. This reinforces the star as a creative project of the studio rather than their own person. The fans believed they had a deep connection with the actors, but really they just loved their personas. Fans would read fan magazines that were often made by writers employed by the studios. Interestingly, a lot of content such as fan magazines were written by women for women. It was one area in an otherwise man's world that women were not ranked lower than men, as female stardom overruled. Women were the ones to pick what films couples would watch, and this encouraged studios to make films with female protagonists. This is a common theme of fandoms being an otherworldly space where minorities can feel inclusivity. It is strange to see parasocial relationships take off from a fake persona. Parasocial relationships are psychological relationships experienced by fans with stars. When they know so much about a star, fans can begin to believe they actually know the star and falsify a relationship with them. This brings me to the question whether parasocial relationships are necessarily bad. I believe when they don't disrupt the personal life of a star, they can be great tools for reimagining Hollywood cinema. A sense of connection to the star is useful when you may be using the star as your muse in conspiracy or fan-made films. Parasocial relationships can be a form of escapism for queer fandoms. However, they can also be harmful. For example, this use of queer speculation in some cases can form into a parasocial relationship when the fan believes they have the right to know an actor's sexuality from the relationship they believe to have built with them. This crosses boundaries and makes the actor uncomfortable being told to confirm their sexuality to the public. In recent cinema, we are now seeing what I would call heterosexual queer representation, meaning representation of queerness that is comfortable for heterosexual people, prioritizing what is profitable, as there is many straight women and queer men who will watch romances on screen, and WW representations seem to just appeal to mainly lesbians due to misogyny, causing this straight-wash content. When the industry makes lesbian romance, it usually has to be a fantasy film of this forbidden love, which usually comes in the case of a period film, for example, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is more expensive to make and seems to be an issue with the public taking lesbian love stories seriously. And with shippings being more dominant in fanfiction, they usually do the marketing themselves, which is another reason they are cheaper to make. Fan-made films are a way to visualize these rumors and conspiracy. Collage films are my favorite use of this reimagination, as they use mainstream cinema imagery and edit them to become relatable to queer audiences. My favourite fan-made film of all time is The Meeting of Two Queens by Cecilia Barriga. In this film, movie stars Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich are cast as lovers. This is possible through the use of editing, taking Hollywood films with a heteronormative perspective and reinventing a new storyline that wouldn't be possible in traditional Hollywood cinema of the time. This film allows us to visualize what is going on behind the screen and portray rumors that were surrounding them, instead of hinting to this, or having to reimagine or translate. Queer audiences can just watch the film for what it is. Artists Kiki Loveday and Susan Potter were inspired by these queer collage films and created Trafficking Kisses, a film that collages the canon of early cinematic on-screen kisses, edited in a collage manner to display different sexualities, as well as clips from Something Good, which is one of the first displays of black intimacy on screen. Trafficking Kisses doesn't necessarily fit into a category, for example, a video essay or a quote-unquote finished film. It is left open and unfinished to be more of a conversation or dialogue of these historical moments in uncovered queer history and mainstream heteronormative cinema. A key feature in this film is that it is not fixed to any individual character, but rather may be dispersed dynamically across a scene between different kinds of bodies and sexual identities on and off screen. Through this, they have made a new film that allows us to view the queer perspective of early cinema romance. The way in which these fan-made films are made is a demonstration of film as an art form. When you compare this to the golden age of Hollywood cinema, Prioritizing efficiency and economic rationalization, I can appreciate these fan-made films more. This use of disobedient fandom going against Hollywood ideals is important to construct the change of perception in sexualities in media that we want to see. Even when they are displayed to us in imperfect or sometimes unfinished works, there is more of a purpose and passion behind it. I feel these films have more mileage, as they're an example of progression and representation. However, there is still a lot of progression to be made in mainstream cinema. queer screen romance is preferred to lesbian or other non-binary representation. Also, this display is often fetishized and questions the ethics behind it. The lack of mainstream lesbian cinema can also be rooted in misogyny. People judge women harder, including women. Fans look for clues in microflow, which is to look for the clues of intimacy between two characters, and with male actors gaining more three-dimensional roles and screen time, it is often easier to find this with an pairing. Fan magazines, as stated previously, were mainly made by women. Early displays of straight women fetishizing relationships are the fan fictions made about Star Trek's Kirk and Spock. Queer male fan fiction was favoured and more profitable. As it was more common, it affects what's being created, as people learn to write fan fiction by reading fan fiction that is popular. As fag comes across fan fiction more often, it is more likely when they see an intimate interaction between men, they assume queer subtext. Hence why when mainstream media began to include queer romance, they found that romances were more profitable. Watching male homoeroticism is a space where women are released from their own body and gender, and internalized misogyny. There is a link between content made by fans inspiring what is made in mainstream cinema in years in the future, as it is profitable for Hollywood to acknowledge what fans want to see. By making fan fiction more diverse, we may see this change be mirrored in mainstream cinema.